And welcome, Senator Duckworth. I just wish you were closer so I could hug you. I'm so happy that you found a little time to be with us today, and I just appreciate you so much, Tammy. I'm looking forward to other things as well, okay?
Okay, thank you, Karen. Yes, we're in the middle of votes. We're actually voting on the Endless Frontiers Act, which will send more money to Fermilab and Argonne
nice.
and invest in all of our schools for development of new technologies. So we're in the middle of a vote series. I'm glad that I was able to come over. This is very exciting. I love Rotary. You know that, right? So
I do. Look, thank you for, taking this time out. I really do appreciate it. I knew you'd be, working today, but you took the time out anyway, and we're just so appreciative for you being here with us. Let me just tell our audience just a snippet about our junior senator from Illinois. United States Senator Tammy Duckworth is an Iraqi war veteran, Purple Heart recipient, and former Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. She was one of the first handful of Army women to fly combat missions during Operation Iraqi Freedom. I'm just in awe of you being able to fly, at all, okay? Senator Duckworth served in the Reserve Forces for 23 years before retiring at the rank of Lieutenant Colonel in 2014. She was elected to the U.S. Senate in 2016 after representing Illinois' 8th Congressional District in the U.S. House of Representatives for 2 terms. She serves on several influential committees that give her an important platform to advocate for Illinois residents. The Armed Services Committee, the Environment and Public Works Committee, the Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, and the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Committee. She's fluent in Thai and Indonesian. She attended college at the University of Hawaii and earned a Master of Arts in International Affairs from the George Washington University. Following graduation, she moved to Illinois and began pursuing a PhD in political science at Northern Illinois University. And later, folks, listen to this, worked for Rotary International. Woohoo! You got to tell us about that, Tammy. You really got to tell us about that.
I will.
Senator Duckworth and her husband, Brian, are the proud parents of 2 daughters, Abigail and Molly. Did I say her name right? Maylee. Senator, thank you again so very much for being with us today. Now, before we begin our discussion, I want to note that in addition to this being Military Appreciation Month, May is also Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. And Tammy, I hope that you got our little, great. Some other time we'll fill it up, okay? So I'm glad that you got this. We wanted to give you something special for being with us today. I appreciate you so much and appreciate you. We're celebrating you today, Tammy. Your time in the military, your time working for us in Illinois. This month is designed to pay tribute, of course, to the generations of Asian and Pacific Islanders who have enriched America's history and are instrumental in its future success. And I don't think anybody sums up this description better than Tammy Duckworth. Tammy, I want to take a moment before we begin our discussion to honor you and all of we want to honor the Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. We thank you for your contributions to history and culture and so many achievements that have enriched all of our communities. Thank you.
Well, thank you for doing this event. I'm really excited to get into our discussion.
Well, we could talk to you for forever, but I understand we have a limited amount of time because you're voting today. So I'm going to jump right in. Could you just tell us a little bit about your background, like your parents, where you were born? We know a little bit about your school, just a little bit about who is Tammy Duckworth?
Oh, well, so I I am the child of an American serviceman who served in Vietnam. My father was older. So my father retired from the Army in 1973. So he served at the very end of World War II. Through the Korean War, he was actually stationed in France at the time. And then he finished out his service with 2 tours in Vietnam at the very beginning of the conflict. After he left the military, he met my mom, married, and decided to just settle down in Asia. And he went to work for the United Nations development programs and refugee programs. So I spent my childhood following my father around Southeast Asia, where he was doing things like bringing food and medical aid to the Vietnamese refugees, the boat people. I was in Cambodia with him until 2 weeks before the Khmer Rouge took over, because he was out stringing telephone lines and communication lines for America and our allies over there. And so we stayed until the very end before I was evacuated on the last flight, commercial flight out. He left on the last military transport out 3 days before the Khmer Rouge took over. So I grew up in Southeast Asia with this very patriotic sense of, my God, am I lucky that I'm an American? Because I could see Amerasian kids like me whose fathers had abandoned them, had gone home after the Vietnam War, and then didn't stay and didn't marry their mothers. And they were street urchins, essentially.
Wow.
And I knew every day I was reminded of how lucky I was that I was born an American. And also just, going with my dad to those refugee camps, I really saw an image of America that I think few Americans who grow up stateside really get and appreciate, because people love America around the world. Like they love us and what we stand for and our ideals and our values. And I think we get very much down on ourselves when we have conflict within our own nation. And look, we have to do a lot better, right? We have to do a lot better when it comes to racism and criminal justice reform and all sorts of things. But when you're overseas looking in, America is this amazing land of opportunity. And that was the version of America that I saw. I remember going to refugee camps, and we had just lost the Vietnam War. So we were not being respected because we were the greatest military might on the face of the earth. In fact, we had just lost a war to an army in black pajamas, and who used bicycles for their logistics supply line, right? Yeah. But they still loved us, because when I would go into those refugee camps, underneath those blue UN tarps that would be stretched out and a family living in the dirt underneath, more times than not, I would see a picture of JFK on the wall.
Wow.
More times than not, I would see an American Peace Corps volunteer or a service organization like Rotary, or somebody was always there from America trying to help when no one else was. The French had colonized Vietnam, right? The French weren't even there. We were, after the war, trying to do the best that we could to help. And so I grew up with this very patriotic sense of America, and I knew I wanted to serve, and I thought I was going to serve in like the Peace Corps or the Foreign Service or something like that. And I moved to Illinois 30 years ago to go to NIU out in DeKalb. I lived in DeKalb for 15 years when I was pursuing my PhD, and that's when I got the job at Rotary, at RI headquarters.
Tell us about that, Tammy. What did you do?
So I was the manager for the Division for Club and District Administration for the Asia Pacific region. So wow. It was my job to interpret Rotary's constitution and bylaws for all 30,000 clubs in the Asia Pacific region. So every club in Asia, I also had Australia and New Zealand, and I also, for some reason, had RIBI. I don't know why I had Britain and Ireland, but maybe because they're an island, I don't know. But anyway, I also had them in my territory. So, for example, when club presidents have an issue, they would call my office and say, hey, we have a problem or something. And it's funny because you really appreciate the vastness of the Rotary Fellowship and how Rotarians are just coming at this service from all around the world when you have a job like mine, because a lot of my work was done at night, overnight. So Rotarians in India and Japan and Korea and Thailand and Philippines would be emailing me and say, and they would be emailing my staff, and then my staff, if they had a question that they couldn't quite answer, would elevate it to me. And I had staff that I supervised in Delhi, in Seoul, in Tokyo, in in Sydney, and they would say, okay, we don't quite understand this. Can you run this down? And so I would get things like I remember one time, the Rotary Club in India, the district governor had written and said, we would like to dismember one of our Rotarians because
Did you say dismember?
Dismember one of our Rotarians for failing to live up to the RI status because he's been cited for corruption. He was bribing government officials.
Oh my goodness!
And he wanted to dismember. But it's funny because he meant basically throw the person out of the club, take away his membership. But he spoke English and I speak English, but our version of English was different. And for him, that was dismembering. So I would wake up and come in, I would get all sorts of great emails like, my son's like, I think our Rotarians want to dismember one another. I'm like, no. They're just saying that they want to eject them.
That's a funny story. I hope our members heard all of this because you might get dismembered.
Do not miss too many meetings. Without doing a makeup, you will get dismembered. On the other hand, when I was serving in Iraq, right? So I was working at Rotary when I was deployed to Iraq with my Illinois National Guard unit. And the RI staff were just so wonderful. The legal department actually kept a box outside their door and people could donate care package items and they would send me care package items. And then I said, don't send me any more things. But as we're flying over Iraq, we are actually tossing out gifts to Iraqi children in the desert and in these poor areas. So we started making what we called candy bombs. And so they would send us things like candy, but then also backpacks, coloring pencils, paper, things that kids could use, kids who maybe don't get to go to school. And so we would fly and drop those we would fly down low and we would drop those out of our helicopter for the Iraqi children. And RI staff members were the ones who put that together. Rotarians would send things in, Rotary clubs would send things in, and I would haul it out in a great big box in my helicopter, and we would go out on missions and we'd drop them out. And I remember being at my tactical operations center as I was sending missions out, and I had my RI flag. We all decorate our area where we're from, and I had my RI flag. And one of the, I think a colonel came through and he looked at me and he took a double take. He's like, Rotary. And I said, yes. He's like, I'm a Rotarian. I'm like, oh, how good, and I got to talking. And then he looks at me and goes, will you give me a makeup?
Oh my goodness.
I'm not a Rotary Club. But what the heck? So I just started issuing. So all these Rotarians would come through who were deployed. They were doctors and attorneys and doing different things. And the word got out that you could go get a Rotary makeup from the RI employee in Balad, Iraq.
Wow. So that was a really cool job, though. Oh my goodness, you've had some really cool jobs, haven't you?
Oh my gosh. Well, can I tell you another Rotary story?
Yeah, please.
So this talks to the importance of the diversity of the Rotary experience and the international nature of Rotary and why it's so amazing. So when I was a staff member, was also the staff member for the Rotary Committee on Opening Rotary in non-Rotary countries. And I actually helped then a Rotary president, Vichai Ratakul, from his year, and we were pushing to try to get Rotary clubs into China, but then also into Afghanistan. So the last Rotary club in Afghanistan had shut down in 1973 or 74 when the Taliban moved in. And we were able to open the first Rotary club in Afghanistan since the 70s. And the first Rotary president was a woman. And I remember talking to them and saying, why a woman? And they said, well, in order to survive under the Taliban, the men oftentimes had to compromise just to save their families from the brutality of the Taliban. But the women and girls were locked up, so we know they don't have blood on their hands.
Wow.
The Rotarians, these mostly male Rotarians, voted and elected a female Rotary president for their first Rotary club.
It's amazing.
Isn't that amazing?
It is, because when you look at the, how Rotary came about and what have you, and, they hadn't accepted women in the club for a long time. And then, and then all of a sudden, that's an amazing story.
But then also the diversity of membership and also the fact that Rotary clubs work with each other is really, really important. In Afghanistan, that same club became a conduit for humanitarian aid going into Afghanistan. This was right after 9/11 had happened. This was like right within, I would say, 24 months. And a lot of like CARE International and Red Cross and all of these organizations were trying to get into Afghanistan, but they didn't know who to deal with that wasn't corrupt, but they knew they could deal with the Rotary Club of Kabul.
Wow.
The Rotary Club of Kabul just took on this mission of bringing in aid, not just from other Rotary clubs, but from international aid organizations as well. And I remember hearing back, I wasn't there, but the report that came back was that they had built a school for girls with funds that had been raised by Rotary clubs all over the United States, had put funds in, and they built this beautiful new school for girls. And they had this opening ceremony where I think the Afghani government was there, their governor, all of these folks, and then the Rotary Club of Kabul was there, as well as some American Rotarians who were both men and women and who were there. And they were doing this big ribbon cutting, and the villagers were there, this new school for their girls. The girls are going to get to go to school for the first time without fear. And this one Afghani villager, this woman, is looking at the Rotarians, and she goes up to one of the American Rotarians. It was a group of Rotarians, men and women, and she addresses one of the female Rotarians that she knows is clearly American and not Afghani or Pakistan or anybody else. And she said, well, thank you for the school. And they were very proud. Said, well, this is the least we can do. We want your girls to go to school. It's important. And she said, yeah, but my daughter will never go to school here.
Wow.
We just built the school for you. What do you mean? You have to send your girls. Girls need to be educated too, and all that. And then she finally looked, and she goes, I came to talk to you because you're Americans, and I know you'll listen. And she said, my daughter has to walk 3 hours a day to fetch water. She can't go to school. Our family won't have drinking water if my daughters don't go fetch water.
Wow.
And this is how much love she had for her child and how much she wanted her daughter to go to school. Imagine being a villager, a female villager in Afghanistan after all those years of Taliban tyranny, to have the guts to go up to people that she sees as incredibly wealthy and fearsome, maybe, with their own government officials, and to say there's a problem. But she couldn't have said it to anybody else. She couldn't have not have said it to the Afghanis. She found the American Rotarians.
Wow.
And talked to them, because even in Afghanistan, they knew that America stood for something. And she said that. And so you know what they did? They just built like 3 wells in the village, and the girls got to go to school. But if there had not been diversity and an international group of Rotarians there, that school would have sat empty. And we would have been going, well, why won't they send these girls to school, these backwards, ignorant people? Why won't they send their girls to school? Because the girls are walking 3 hours a day to get water is why. And we would never have known. So thank God for like Rotary being so diverse and working together.
Oh, thank you for sharing that story. Sometimes we get so wrapped up in everything that's going on in our own lives. We don't even think in terms of, what other people, how they say, walk a mile in my shoes. Oh my goodness. So that's amazing. That's really amazing. So real quick, Tammy, what drew you to public service and elective office?
So I thought I was going to go back to RI, which is all I wanted to do, was go back to my National Guard unit and go back to my job at RI. And RI had been so kind. They said, listen, your job is here. Whenever you get through your recovery, we will accommodate your need for a wheelchair and all of that. Your job is here until you come back. So I was headed back to RI. But at the time, even though I was getting the best healthcare possible at Walter Reed, where I was recovering for 13 months, the administrative care left something to be desired. So even though I was getting world-class doctors and medications and stuff, Walter Reed wasn't prepared for the number of war amputees or war wounded surviving wounds that should have killed them. Even had I been wounded in the Persian Gulf War, I would never have survived. But the medical technology just got so good that I was able to survive, and they were able to keep me alive until I got to Walter Reed. So there were all of these family members there, but there was no place for them to stay. And the Army just was not ready to support that. And so we had, my mom slept on the ICU waiting room floor with all the other moms and all of the other husbands and wives for 2 weeks because there was no place for them to even take a shower. Or, she would sneak into my room and when I was in the ICU, she couldn't shower because there was no bathroom in the ICU for me, because you're in the ICU, right? So there was a lot of that. And I happened to be the highest ranking amputee at Walter Reed for about 9 months. And so I had met Dick Durbin and Barack Obama. Barack Obama was on the Veterans Affairs Committee, the young junior senator. And Dick Durbin had given me his personal phone number on the back of a business card because there were only two Illinois guardsmen wounded at Walter Reed at the time. And he told me, anytime either of you guys need anything, you call me. Oh, counted for everyone, not just the two of us.
Oh, wow.
And Dick Durbin became the unofficial ombudsman for Walter Reed, fixing the problems for all of those families. And see, most Illinoisans don't know that he did this. And he just did it quietly. It didn't matter where they were from. Somebody didn't get their pay straight. The Army was paying for someone's mom to be there, but wouldn't fly his wife out, or, all sorts of crazy stuff like that. And after a while, Senator Obama asked me to testify before the Veterans Affairs Committee. And after I testified, a couple months after that, Dick Durbin called me up and said, if you think we're not doing right by our men and women in uniform, then you need to run for office. I remember thinking, does he know I'm still medicated right now? As he asked me this question. I waited a few months and talked about it with my husband because I really loved my job at RI. I really wanted to go back to it, and I love, staffing. We would do the training for governors, and we would do the training for presidents, and we would go to, all the conventions and all of that. I love staffing Rotarians because just the thousands of ideas that Rotary clubs come up with for service projects is fascinating on itself. And just to be able to help people who were doing these service projects was great. Right. But I just decided that, I'll run for office. And that's how I got into politics. I'm an accidental politician.
Well, I'm glad you're accidentally on purpose there. We need you there. And we appreciate your service without a doubt. I know we're supposed to, we've only got 15 minutes, so I got to hear from you. You just published a book recently. I don't know where you get the time to do all of this stuff, because I know what it's like to be a legislator, okay? And you have 2 children at home and a husband, and you represent us in Washington. So now, a book? Really? Tell me about it.
Yeah, it's also an accident.
Oh boy, lots of accidents here.
I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. And when the 3-year-old was born, I knew that the 6-year-old would start to feel jealous and sibling rivalry because she was used to being the baby, right? And now there's a new baby. So I created this time with her before she goes to sleep every night where it's Mommy Abigail time. No daddy, no one else. It's just special Mommy Abigail time. And we pinky promised that we could ask each other any question during that time, and that we won't get mad at each other, and we can talk about anything and we won't get mad. We will try to answer the best that we could, but you have to answer the question. I'm hoping this lasts until she's 16 and 17. I don't know if it will or not.
Forget about it.
I'm hoping if I start now, it might stick. About 18 months ago, she was in preschool. This was pre-COVID, and it was like Halloween, I think, and I'd gone to her school's Halloween, celebration, and they had the kids in the parade, and they did like out on the lawn of the school, and they did like they did like face painting, and one of the things was like a 3-legged race, which Abigail really wanted to do, but I can't do a 3-legged race. I mean, I could, we just wouldn't win, but we just sit there on the ground and not get anywhere or go very slowly. And that night, she knew that Mommy has always been in a wheelchair. Mommy's always never had legs, and it never bothered her. But that day it bothered her because she saw the other mommies, and she said, Mommy, how come someone else's mommy or daddy couldn't have gone to Iraq and gone to war and lose their legs? Why did you have to go? And it just like,
Yeah.
And I tried to tell her, well, honey, it was worth it, and I would do it again because America's worth it. And I was at a loss of words. So whenever I was traveling back and forth between Illinois and DC, or when I was on a trip anywhere, I would use the notes app on my phone, and I would try to write out a paragraph to explain to her why America was worth to me losing my legs. And I was like, well, when mommy was in high school, she was really hungry, and there was this thing called food stamps that helped me to survive so that I didn't have to drop out of high school. Or, mommy grew up overseas after a war, and I saw kids who were refugees, who were fleeing communists. And so I believe in democracy, and I wanted to defend it. And so I was like writing these paragraphs, like a paragraph at a time here and there. And one day my chief of staff, and Caitlin.
Oh, yeah.
Caitlin looked at me and said, what are you doing on your phone, as we were like in the airport or something? And I said, well, I'm just writing answers to my daughters, hoping someday they'll be old enough. I'll give it to them and they'll read it, and maybe they would also serve, maybe in uniform or maybe something else. And Caitlin like scrolled through my phone and she said, Tammy, this is a book proposal. This is a book.
Wow.
And that's how how the book came about. It was just really trying to answer to my daughter why America is worth the service and worth the sacrifice. And it's really a love letter to America, but really, I end the book with a letter to my girls, asking them to, serve their country one day.
That's beautiful. So. Beautiful. So the name of the book?
Every Day is a Gift. And it's out now. It made the bestsellers list because
Whoa! Look at you!
Yeah,
oh my goodness!
It's not a typical memoir. In fact, the New York Times said this is not a typical memoir. Although I showed drafts of it to Dick Durbin, like the first 4 chapters, and he came back to me and he said, "Tammy, this is very good, but can you take out all the swearing? There's a lot of it's not good for your career if you have all of this." And I did take any out. And I even included really dirty Army jokes in there as well. So,
oh my goodness.
They come up during my re-election campaign. I don't know. But the people are like, oh my God.
That's okay. I'll be right out there. I'll be right out there with you. Okay? So real quick, I wanted to see if we had any questions in the chat box. I know one, Karen Thompson, she's one of our members and one of our former presidents, wants to know if you'll give her makeup.
Well, I'm not an RI staff member anymore, but I guess, who knows?
Okay, well, for all you Rotarians on the phone, when you go to Washington and you get a chance to see our senator, tell her you want a makeup.
If you come visit me in DC, I'll give you a makeup.
I'll
tell them that you talked about Rotary with me, and that qualifies you for a makeup.
That's right.
President and secretary have to decide that.
That's right. Let's see. Oh, we've got lots of thank yous here for your commitment to Illinois and this nation. And that's from one of our newest members. And you met Brian Cross because he actually filed your DD-214 in the Recorder of Deeds office some time ago. So, and we have that picture, Tammy, and it's in that office on the first floor at 118 North Clark. So it's right there, and there you are signing, your papers. And so we, you're special around here, okay? Let's see.
I thank you for doing that because, I deal a lot with veterans who are trying to get their benefits, or the spouses of veterans who passed away are trying to get benefits, and they can't find the paperwork.
Well, we tell people.
And so do it for your family if you're not doing it for yourself.
Yeah, we encourage them. There's somebody's talking about HR 914 that would require the VA to treat dental care like the other medical specialties. The Coalition of Veterans Organization would like Senator Duckworth to introduce a companion bill in the Senate.
I have to see. I think there is already a companion bill. Okay. I will look into it. Of course, I would support something like that. It's your dental health is so critical to your overall health. If you can't eat, you can't be nutritious.
Agreed.
So, let me check on that because I think I've seen it that someone else is carrying it, but I would check.
Okay. All right. Gloria says, can you share the status of the John Lewis voting bill? Has it been brought to the Senate floor yet?
It has not. The problem is that right now, without filibuster reform, it would take 60 votes to pass, and we don't know that we could get 10 Republican votes.
Okay, all right, Gloria, you hear that? Maybe they need some other people in the Senate. Huh?
Or if you have friends who are from Indiana or Iowa or Missouri, reach out to their senators and ask them to please support it. It's protecting the rights of Americans to vote, and let's not disenfranchise, tens of millions of Americans. Yeah.
Okay, Gary, you said Gary Wolf says he would like to say something. Let me see. Frank, can we open it up so Gary can say something? Yes. There you go, Gary. There you go.
Okay. Tammy, I heard you speak at Rotary, our district meeting, it must have been six years ago. And one story about what I got one thing out of it that really connects with what you've been saying today and what a terrific person you are. I really follow where the votes are. And by the way, I'll be out in front of my precinct, 2 precincts on. And I looked around the room and I know all the clubs in our district. Not one club was in the congressional district that you were running in. Wow. There may have been some members because of where they worked. And I thought, wow, she's in the middle of a freshman campaign for Congress and she spends half a day with Rotary. Congratulations.
Oh, that's nice.
That's 2 makeups.
2 makeups for Gary Wolf.
well, thank you, Gary. And I have to say, this is not a campaign event. We shouldn't be talking about priests. This is my own hat, my Rotary Constitution and bylaws. I love Rotary and I love Rotarians because, I mean, think about it. These are people who volunteer to attend a meeting every week and have to pay dues and get asked to spend extra money in order to do service projects for other people.
Yes.
So it's like, are you kidding me? How do you not support people who literally dedicated personal time and financial resources so that they would have the privilege of being told you need to do a service project?
Yeah.
And so most people, the little secret is that I would never say no to a Rotary Club, wherever it is, because I just want to lift up Rotary the way Rotary lifted me up as a staff member, and Rotary stood by me when I was hurt and kept my job for me, but mostly because Rotarians are just a heck of a lot of fun.
They are. I agree with you.
They're a little crazy, although the craziest, and I don't know if there are any in here, are the PDGs.
Oh.
They never stop being PDGs. Are there some, cause the PDGs, and they're like, they can't stop being PDGs. They're always coming up with new ideas and new things to do.
Yes, sure. Scott Kozlov would like to say, other than voting and contributing financially, is there anything in particular that we can do to support you and your efforts on our behalf? Wow, that was a big open-end question. So throw it at him.
Well, I think it's just really, well, I'm not going to talk politics here. I'm just going to talk what we need to do for the country. One of the things that I've been working on for a very long time is environmental justice.
Oh,
and so maybe what you could do is think about future service projects around the environmental justice issue. So the fact is that we still have lead in our drinking water supply. We still have schools that have lead in the school buildings where kids can't drink the drinking water. We have problems, we're in Chicago, and the beaches in the Loop and up are the gorgeous, lake shore. But on average, those beaches are closed 1 day a year due to poor water quality. But if you go to the south side of Chicago, they're closed an average of 39 days a year. So kids who grow up on the south side of Chicago, I've met many, have never been to the beach, never been to the lake shore.
Wow. Never
accessed the local parks. And so any service projects that, if you're thinking about those things, think about, it's not all, criminal justice reform is important, but there are other forms of service that we can do that will make all of our communities better. And so think about some of the environmental work that could be done just in our own backyards, literally, you know.
Okay, that's a good one. That is an excellent one, because we all want to have access to, you know, obviously, you know, opportunities to enjoy the lakefront, enjoy the air quality, enjoy all of these things we kind of take for granted. So we'll put that somewhere with our Mr. President. Maybe that's something that we can do. We've been cleaning up. You know, after a winter, you find all of this stuff all over the place. And so just this last weekend, we had a cleanup project. We have exactly, I know you have a hard stop at 1:15, so I'm going to thank you for spending this time with us. I really, really appreciate it, and I know everybody on this call does. And I'm going to turn it back over to the president for his final remarks, and I'll be seeing you soon.
All right, Karen.
Well, okay, bye-bye.
Memorial Day, right? So
Yeah.
we'll be at the Memorial Day stuff.
Absolutely.
All right,
Okay, Mr. President.
So, thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay, I've got